Okay, that went well. We're more or less on schedule, and I mean, I think the bottom line, and I'd be interested in any input from Jean and Mary, is that after a lot of work, mostly by those two, the school department, they hit their number, and subject to correction from Don or anyone else, it appears to me that that we have a budget that we can vote on, and even though by statute, the town assigns the schools an amount of dollars, and they have, they make the decision. They have the final word. School committees have final word on the allocation of school budgeted money. But we're an advisory committee, so we can feel free to advise. So I think we did some of that, and I'm really serious about trying to get into that process a good deal earlier next year, because I think, if I'll say this, among us in a public taped meeting that will exist forever on in the cloud, that at the beginning of this cycle with this new group in the advisory committee, I said, it would really be nice to be more relevant. And I think the work that some of our members did with the school budget achieved that. So I'm really very pleased. I saw some hands, Fran and Mike, and then I think Don, maybe we'll talk about getting the budget in front of the committee, and we'll spend some money. Fran?
Yeah, I'm glad you said what you said, because that needed to be heard. Not only said, but needed to be heard. Just as a note, by the way, between the parking of the buses and the new second grade teacher, there's over $100,000 right there.
Yeah,
it's a pile of money. Pile of money.
That's too much.
You're right.
Crazy. They could. I believe, I've looked at it. I've got to do some more. I got to go measure some buses, but I believe that they can park those buses up on the road between the Deer Hill School and the Osgood School. They can do a little bit of paving, put them in some little diagonal parking, and it would be just fine. But to spend that kind of money to park the buses, and now to have a teacher, so because we're going to have 3 more kids in the classroom, we're not talking about 30 kids in the classroom. We're talking about 21. That's a pile of money. Go ahead, Mary.
There are hands all over
Mary
the place.
was first. I think
I saw first. Mike, and then Patrick, and then Jean, and then Mary. So that's the order in which I perceived them. I don't know whether you were first or not, but you were first to me. So Mike?
Yeah, Rob, I would echo Fran's comments that I'm really glad you said that, because, there's so much of this gets left to the last minute to, it gets thrown at us, and it's sort of take it or leave it sometimes. I'm not saying that's what happened necessarily, but you look at things like they've got 5.5 FTEs that are essentially on grants, and that's the kind of conversation that needs to be had in June, not March 31st. And
I completely agree.
It's just an unsustainable financial model that's going to catch up with us. And you're not calling the coming of winter. It's when you have a budget that has benefited from things like new growth. When the economy slows down, that new growth goes away. It does. And then all of a sudden you've got a hole in your budget. And so I just really think that, capital operating, when town meeting's over, everyone likes to exhale and, take some time off. But I really think that jumping on this type of stuff as soon as possible after town meeting is over to have these discussions in advance is going to be really important. So thanks for saying what you said.
Sure. Thanks. And if there's anything about what Jean was saying that Hingham was doing that is intriguing, if you have the inside track to getting anything that we might want to look at, please do. You do a lot for this committee already, but you're our mole as far as I'm concerned for our neighbors to the west.
Well, Jean was right. It's all publicly available.
Oh, I know that.
But that being said,
you need to know where to look.
Of conversation. When I was on the advisory committee in 2004 in Hingham, we didn't just have town meeting, drop the mic, and forget about everything until December. There were efforts over the summer to front run, to try to look around the corner and anticipate what's coming at us so that we can game plan around that. And that's, right. I think in any situation, that's just an important exercise. So,
okay. Patrick, and then Mary.
Yeah, ditto to Fran and Mike's comments. I won't repeat them. Totally agree. I'll add to the list. It really bothers me and has bothered me since we got the presentation from the IT portion of the budget, that the systems analyst position, that like for the most part, like 90% is school-based work, is being shifted over from the school budget to the town budget. It's another, I don't know, $75,000, $80,000 add to the other numbers that Fran raised that really shows this budget to be, they're not going to be able to do that every year. And it's another cost being absorbed by all the taxpayers on the town side for school costs. And it really should be allocated within the school, not on the town side. So I'll leave my comment there.
I think it's a fair comment. It's part of the dialogue that made this budget possible, but I think it's another warning post for us as a town to be, more objective about the various inputs to the budget. I think the school department can point to some things, some burdens they carry that perhaps are the other way, but I don't think right this minute, I would support passing this budget, but you're by all means right. When we start having that look around the corner discussion that Mike has, is some more I'm not sure I'm getting the right word, but more objective cost accounting is let's call things what they are. But Mary, I'm sorry.
I would just be interested too in, Dawn, what you felt your process was like after kind of we had called it détente, so to speak. Did you feel like you had a dialogue? Were you able to have a dialogue with Susan and Patrick? Because there wasn't a whole lot of communication before.
Yeah, I've had a dialogue with Susan since day one.
Excuse me. Can I just add something here quickly? I'm sorry to interrupt. We're still broadcasting on Comcast. I didn't know if we're supposed to be.
We're supposed to be recording.
Right. Maybe
Our
Tracy can
committee doesn't typically go down the cable wire. So if that's not what we do, I think we should not do so until we consciously decide that that's something we're going to do. We're not, and while I appreciate the international fame that comes with being a 143 TV idol, thanks for catching that. Mary, before Jean protected our semi-privacy, you were saying.
I would just like to say I think this year was the last 2 years were clearly a bit of an anomaly for probably every district, everywhere. It's very dangerous to sneak those positions in, as far as I'm concerned. And, but I think now we have our eyes open to that. I would much rather try to spend our time going a little bit back to some of the things Fran said, a little bit more of the brick and mortar, where we can find savings, whether it's buses here, let the educating happen. I mean, if we find that there's a cohort in terms of special education and it's worth building a classroom, they're very good at doing that and finding some savings there. But I feel like we definitely need to zoom up about 30,000 feet here and just look big picture and really encourage some creative thinking. And to your point, Rob, not starting at last year's baseline and then just adding on to it. I think if we can reframe that part of the discussion, I think for all of the different departments, that could be incredibly useful.
Okay. So in terms of getting done what we at least propose to get done now, Don, do we have a budget on which we can vote?
Yes, so I have a copy of the Appendix A that is included within the town warrant.
Okay. Is that the town warrant dated March 30 that we received? I think I received two versions of it, or at least I received the same version twice.
You may have. So the Appendix A, I did a small tweak on our risk management numbers, about like 16 grand. So I have where we're at right now. If you'd like me to share that document.
Could you?
on the
I do
screen.
not have an Appendix A.
I did not include it, Rob, in the warrant yet. It hasn't been included.
Okay, so, all right. Well, why don't you show it to us and let's talk about it a little bit, and then we'll have a process discussion about, I mean, we've talked about a lot of these components, and, you know, the numbers have come in so that we have the balanced budget. Of course, that's a statutory requirement, so it's not, you know, we better.
Right.
But we have a budget that every major committee is going to go to town meeting supporting, which I think is important.
Tracy,
so
sorry,
go
Rob.
ahead.
Tracy, could I get permission to share my screen? Thank you. All right. So this is basically a summarized version of the budget details I sent out at probably one of the last meetings. And this is included in the back of the warrant before town meeting. Usually it doesn't change. There have been times that it has, but at this point, I think we're in good shape. And so just one thing to note, there will be a difference in amount in this, not in total. We look at a forecast, and those are the numbers that we ultimately budget for. But you have to remember there's multiple articles within the budget. So for instance, within these numbers are not the transfers to stabilization fund. So when I get to the bottom here, the total general fund total is 49,898,642. It also doesn't include the other amounts to be raised that are shown on the forecast, but this is essentially the total general fund portion that will end up being included in the motions at town meeting. And then we also have the sewer enterprise and water enterprise below for reference. And I got to be quite honest, I can't remember how we've done this in prior years. If this is how we voted, or if you just voted the article itself, as you've already gone through all the pieces. Because again, in the motion, the Appendix A is informational. The motions really have all the actual language and dollar amounts that are actually being voted on. That makes sense.
My recollection is that we vote the warrant as it's been, article as it's been placed in front of us with the appendix, and then that is subsequently reflected in the motions, where the number is, you know, more or less static. Under the present circumstances where all the components of this budget have been vetted and the biggest single chunk of it being the school department has been voted and approved, I would be comfortable voting on a motion to approve Article 4 plus Appendix A in the form it's been presented. If there's any substantial departure from that, you know, we have time between now and town meeting to deal with that, up to and including a meeting just prior to town meeting. That's where I stand. Does anybody have any other thoughts about that? Okay.
And Rob, I just want to make a point. Sorry,
Go ahead, Don.
I really don't see any change happening. We just
I'm
worked
sure
so
that-
hard with the school to get balanced, to be in line with where we're at. And
Yeah, I should, yeah, it's impossible to overstate how much positive work got done. I think if any of us watched the budget portions of school committee meetings earlier in the winter, their approach to budgeting ripened considerably from some positions that seem to be happening over there, for them to come around and get in on the number that that committee needed to. So that's a good thing. Fran, you had your hand up.
Don, you just quoted a number, and I missed it. I don't see where it is on this sheet.
so I'm on the screen here where my cursor is.
Yeah.
The 49,898,642.
Okay. Yeah, I think you maybe you mixed up the numbers or I got it. Okay, that's what I thought you were talking about. Thank you.
Maybe I did.
So if somebody's interested in making the motion, we can get a second and have some more discussion in the context of having a live motion. He says, looking at Jean.
I have it right here at my fingertips.
Imagine that.
I just need to know, hold on just a minute, let me just get the warrant. Because I have that here too. And just see, I mean, I wasn't including the numbers last night because Chris mentioned that they might change.
I think if you just reference the operating budget, it should
Okay.
be adequate for our purposes, subject to Patrick. And I think he was good with that last night. So
Okay, all right. So move that the advisory committee recommend that town meeting approve the operating budget for the town in the form presented in the draft annual town meeting warrant dated March 30th, 2022.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. Jean Estino,
Aye.
Fran Collins, Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman. I'm an aye. This is always my favorite part of being on the advisory committee. We just spent $50 million. Don, can you do me one quick favor? Can you scroll up to the top of the document that's on the screen?
Sure.
Yeah, I had one question. I see a line for advisory committee at $360.
Yeah.
My question is, where's my $4?
Well, that is not for salaries, sir. That is for,
Stipend for minutes.
yeah.
It's
I was
not
gonna say,
enough,
I counted
Patrick.
those, Patrick, then.
I'll have to
It'll
talk to Chris about working that in, Patrick.
fund our annual holiday party. So
I
excellent.
think the 360 is for the annual subscription to the Massachusetts Advisory Committees. And there
That's
was,
right.
I think something else that we spend $180 on a couple times a year.
I honestly was curious how we were consuming $360 of the budget, but okay. So that leaves us with, we're pretty much on time, but we've got 3 unvoted articles. And I think my inclination is to defer them. We have a meeting noticed for Tuesday at 6:00 p.m., I think.
Yep.
Which is intended to precede the select board. It's intended to follow up on capital budget doing their thing. Mike, do you have a level of confidence about how about capital budget getting us a final grid by Tuesday afternoon?
I mean, if the library roof gets taken care of with ARPA or CPC funds, that should be fine. I think there's a lingering question out there with that front end loader where that's gone from $25,000 to repair the transmission to $200,000 for the new one, which may be justified. I don't know if using Chapter 90 funds is gonna, I guess that's not our decision really, but that's the other question, because those are the 2 big items that would cause them to have to push a bunch of other items off that list. So I will, I'll check in with that committee tomorrow, and hopefully you all got the updated spreadsheet I sent last night, which allows you to play around with the numbers and see what's out there. But I think those are the 2 big issues. And I would hope that yes, on Monday, they'll be able to vote on that final capital budget.
Okay, Mary, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Mike, I was just curious when looking at those spreadsheets on the still to be debated conversation was some of the IT security asks. Where does that stand? Because after hearing from Ron, they seemed fairly important.
Yeah, no, they when you look at the top where they've got the 1.8 million that's been approved,
Correct.
those IT numbers are included in that. I think the question around the IT budget is, as Ron moves us more towards the cloud, it should become, as we're outsourcing more of that, it moves from capital buying equipment to operating,
Oh, okay.
paying Microsoft or Amazon to host all of those services. And I think that's the big question, though, and that they're trying to get some clarity around it. And frankly, we all need it too, because it's going to come into the operating budget at some point. It's not going to be a capital expenditure. If we're kind of intellectually honest about how we're categorizing stuff, it's going to become an operating cost. So that's why those were down at the bottom. I'll double check, because I believe that's the extent of which they're trying to understand, but those have been ostensibly approved, even though they weren't voted.
Okay.
I
mean-
just saw today, Mary, a in-depth detailed response from Ron Menard
Okay.
about a couple of the outstanding questions that capital budget had.
Okay.
I didn't see if he finally sent that to Brian Host yet for review, but I did see that today. That should answer the couple questions that they had. And I believe last night, Chris brought up the one-time cost article for the prepayment of those years 2 and 3. And so this is definitely something we've been talking about as we move to these services, the increased operating costs, which again, doing the prepayment will save us $135,000 over the couple of years. And we already pay for service level agreements now. So it's not going to be whatever these services are that we're implementing. It's not going to be just a full brand new cost. We will have cost savings on the older service level agreements that we do have. So that has been talked about, and we will be planning for that. And luckily with that one-time cost article to help us prepay some of this and recognize those savings, we will have adequate time to really build that into the budget for a year once we do hit those out years.
Great.
Have everything wrapped into the budget.
I mean, when you think about it, don't know why there's reverb. That the school bus leases, the Chromebook leases, all that stuff ends
Go
up
ahead.
in capital. And I know that's a decision that's been made, but it's not really.
I had the same issue and question. I had not a long one, but another discussion with Brian the other night. And the way he explained it to me was that because those were technically, well, the Chromebooks are a lease to buy. So technically we are buying an asset and not just purely leasing them.
Okay.
Now, again, you could argue that after 3 years, we have to get new ones and we have to keep going with the lease process. So, you could probably split hairs there. The trailer that we leased, we did get ownership. So that one I didn't even have a question. And the school bus lease was a very long discussion and explanation of us owning them at one point and spending hundreds of thousands per year to basically maintain a fleet that were outdated.
Yeah.
And so I
They
guess
were- they were a
this
mess.
helped. But I agree with you, Mary.
I mean, in the bigger picture, it gets down to having a little more clarity on what actually each department is spending. I mean, we put it in these different buckets, and sometimes it's in a shared budget and sometimes it's over here and over, but it would be really good just to be able to drill down in some way, whether there's an algorithm that you can do on the Excel file that can do that for us. That would just be good information.
I agree with you, Mary, on the Chromebook leases in particular. I mean, first of all, students aren't required to buy them. Most students give them back. It's a lease. I don't know what percentage of those end up getting bought, but it's a lease. I mean, the depreciable, Chromebooks depreciate pretty quickly.
They're at end of life by the end of a 3-year lease.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted Mike, but I couldn't agree more. Jean?
I might add a little bit of clarity to the school bus lease. As was stated a few minutes ago, we had a fleet of buses that were old and decrepit and costing a lot of money to maintain. So the feeling was that if we replaced them, they would be capital items. So the capital budget committee agreed, the capital budget committee and the town agreed that because buying would be capital, leasing could be capital. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. I'm
No, it was actually
paraphrasing.
Brian, it was Brian's idea because
Yes.
he couldn't figure out how to square the circle.
Well, actually, it was the previous bus maintenance person's idea, and he messed himself out of a job. But you know, it's all good. I mean, we were driving kids around in buses
no,
that
that's
were
terrible.
well maintained because everything was taken care of immediately, but they didn't look like they were well maintained. And we were dealing with inspections twice a year by the registry, and it was just a whole hoo-ha mess.
So
So
one thing I didn't get into, I was curious, but I kind of wanted to just end the conversation once we got to the points we did. I was curious about where that maintenance person went and how that savings was absorbed into the budget. But that, I guess, a question for another day. And I'm big on moving forward.
Yeah,
with how
I
we're going
don't-
to fix things instead of
Well,
getting worried about, years past. But that was a question I had.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe if we could put our hands on we had all the data in the school committee. I just don't know where it might be in my house, like buried in the basement somewhere. But I'm sure it's at town hall because all of those records were filed appropriately.
that's what I think, when we come out of town meeting is we should, as a committee, decide to do 2 or 3 things and do them really well. And if one of those is to really scrub through certain budgets and use the benefit of institutional knowledge from people who knew it before they got on the board 2 years ago, that might be one of those things that we can do well. So in terms of the other things, so capital budget's going to come in, we're going to have a discussion and hopefully a vote, and I'm comfortable with that. I think if any of us have individual questions about individual capital items, we should be prepared with those, or maybe even send people some notes beforehand so that we're not engaged in too long of a discussion. We're really going to have kind of an hour, we vote, and then we'll have done our duty by the select board, who makes a practice of not voting on certain things until they have the advice of advisory. So assuming that we can do what we need to do with capital budget, that leaves, to my count, 2 open items. And that would be the alternative energy proposal and the water department's GAC filter. And I'm at a point after our conversation last night that I'm actually pretty comfortable if we don't have final language and a real sense of exactly where that money is coming from in front of us prior to Tuesday afternoon, that we just defer our recommendation to town meeting, wait till we get the information and deal with it in due course. We're against a somewhat artificial deadline with the date by which the warrant has to be printed and served on us all by the town constable. I just don't feel like hurrying up, and both of those, there just feels to me personally like there are too many loose ends, but that's just my opinion. I see Fran's hand.
Could you refresh me as to what the issue is with the GA filter, the activated carbon filter, and the other things for the PFAS stuff? I thought we had talked about that sometime in the past, and it was sort of a done deal, but I missed something.
We did talk about it. My takeaway from talking with Chris about it last night is that we are waiting for final language from town council. And that's a pretty dense paragraph. If you look at the draft warrant article, I haven't parsed it yet. And I'm sure that if council does so, it has all the moving parts in it that it needs to execute that acquisition. But where I'm hearing from the town manager appropriately that this isn't the language, my position on it's really very basic, is until we have final language, I don't think we should vote on it, or I'm not comfortable voting on it. I'm sure at the end of the day, we're going to buy the thing. That's
Okay, that's fine, because just as an, oh, by the way, I read a piece in the paper yesterday, the day before, that they have been now finding microplastics in people's blood. This is astounding how, this stuff is so insidious. It's everywhere, and PFAS is one of these things. And the sooner we take advantage of, trying to keep that stuff at bay, or even arrest it, the better off we'll all be for it.
substantively, I'm entirely with you. It's just a process point. We will vote prior to town meeting, and it'll be on the warrant with a recommendation up or down, probably up.
Okay, good. I
Mike,
was
I
just
saw your-
I just wasn't clear on that. That was a matter of how it was worded. That's the issue. there.
Getting
Okay,
final
thanks.
language.
Yeah. good.
Mike,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think our hang up, for lack of a better way of putting it, was it's a big dollar amount. It's been discussed before, but for the average person reading the informational paragraph, it was confusing. And so it's sort of set the article up to, in my opinion, fail on the floor of town meeting potentially, because it was complicated and it just really needs to be articulated in layman's terms so the average person can understand exactly what it is, because so many, I think the money's already been basically appropriated,
Yeah.
more or less, and people, and it doesn't really say that plainly in that article, and that's, I think, more the point from that's why I wasn't ready to vote for it last night.
okay, can I perhaps, and then Jean and then Don, or Don and then Jean, it might make sense, Don, if you could maybe carry that comment back to Chris. If on Tuesday night we have language that we can vote, I'd be happy to put it in front of the committee. So, Jean?
The price, I believe, had already been approved in a prior meeting, but at a lower price point. Was that not right, Mike? Did you understand it that way?
I can
thought it was in the
answer
3
that.
millions and now
What?
it's in the 4
What's
million.
Yeah, there was a little
Don-
bit extra added to it, but
So
it was
that-
more just the number itself is a big number,
Right.
and there wasn't really any context or a reminder that, okay, 90% of this has been approved already.
Exactly.
For X reason, there's a little bit more coming, and this is why, because it's not just the water, PFAS is in the soil too. I hate to say it. It's, I've done a lot of work on this stuff at work, and it's insidious. So yeah, we need it.
Bad stuff.
I want to let Don had a point, probably a comprehensive explanation, but I do recall, Mike, that one of the things that you said last night was that the last line of the informational survey summary that says this project will be funded by water revenues is going to set a lot of people off. Our water bills are substantial, and if just saying it just like that will lead, it'll lead to unnecessary discussion at town meeting about it adding to water cost, where a more nuanced and accurate descriptor might make everybody, to use, I think, the technical term, chill out a little bit. But Don, did I misspeak?
No. Just for clarification, I guess I will bring these back to Chris. Chris and I talked earlier about this, and I hope him and I will be chatting more tomorrow. But yeah, essentially, we've already approved this project in the prior year.
Right.
What we've done is applied to the state for SRF funding. We've been awarded that. Now we have to go and get the specific language, so this will basically require us to rescind the prior borrowing authorization in a prior project to allow us to then, the way I would think it would happen is that we rescind the old article, have the next article approving the new language. That, yeah, I get that. If you just saw this is a brand new $4 million coming from water revenues, you might be curious. But essentially what SRF does is we've been awarded 0% financing and potential principal forgiveness. So the reason why the amount also is more is because SRF, the state, has recommended that you add a contingency factor as well, in addition to the money that we applied for. So how we explain that in the warrant, in the informational section, I don't have an answer for you right now, but it's definitely concern that I'll bring to Chris and figure out the best way for us to do that. So this is a no-brainer. I mean, it is going to save at least 80 grand a year in interest costs, but the 0%, 80 grand a year over 20 years is a big saving when you don't even take into account the potential principal forgiveness on the project. So I think it'll just be key to really have that informational section kind of explain that.
I think
we have to.
I think so. I've got Mike and then Jean. I would just say, with respect to the informational section, if you could bottle what you just said I think it's very persuasive. And I think in terms of some of the wording that's in there now, the sort of the Hippocratic oath, first do no harm, take out the language that will bother people. It is not, strictly speaking, accurate. So Mike and Jean, I saw thumbs from at least one of you. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with all of that. I don't know if the formatting of the warrant allows it, but bullet pointing like each of those points that you just made, Don, in bullet points so that it's very easy to understand.
Right.
To me, that would be the best way to succinctly and clearly communicate what you just said, because there's a lot of intricacies in there that if someone hasn't been paying attention for the last couple of years, they're going to get confused and probably scared by it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
okay, so then let's be optimistic that we have, I think all of us are feeling positive about voting for this article. I think we all have thanks to Don, I have a much better understanding of precisely what it is we're being asked to do. I did know that it was, as Jean pointed out, from a prior appropriation, but if we can just clarify it and make it an easy sell on town meeting floor. One of the things we'll need to discuss between next week and town meeting is which articles as a committee we want to be prepared to address, and this may be one of them.
Yeah.
That one of us should stand up and, I don't know, crib what Don just said, but to help make it really clear that this is a very, very good idea. Both we need this piece of equipment and this is the best possible terms to get it on. So, all right, that leaves us with, unless anybody had any further comments on the PFAS filter. Okay, that leaves us with the proposal from the Alternative Energy Committee. I think that there were there are a lot of good ideas in connection with front loading this article and getting the study money and getting federal money to assist with that part. But I think we did ask for we expressed at least the opinion that the language in the warrant article needs to be very express about the stop points along the way, making things contingent, for example, on getting the federal grant before spending any money. And also, we need a good answer on where does the money come from. Having, bless you, having just had the conversation we had with the school department over, some fairly detailed stuff, and capital budget over some fairly detailed stuff and everything else. I think that, to me, the 250 needs to have a genuine source that can be articulated to town meeting. Don, is there any progress toward getting any of that stuff, or are we likely to have something to vote on by Tuesday?
That
Or
will
do
be
you know?
something
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I mean,
No, that article's been kind of out of my my purview. So the 250, I don't know where. We have stabilization, but there's plenty of ways to come up with it. How I would do that right this second, I'd have to talk to Chris with what his thoughts are. Because we might be getting federal grants, I don't think you can use another federal grant for the town match. That's usually not allowed. So I don't know where the money's going to come from at this point.
okay. Well,
Sorry for the long answer to it.
no, I think probably at this point, we're just rehashing things we discussed last night. Let's see if there's anything to talk about on Tuesday. And if we can't talk about it on Tuesday, that's far from the end of the road. We can work it out and just bring a recommendation to the floor at town meeting. And that happens, I don't have a problem with that, with this article. Other articles, I think it's a bad luck. With this article, I don't think so. Does anybody have anything further on the alternative energy proposal other than just let's wait and see? Hearing none. Patrick, do we have minutes? Do we have more minutes? No?
Oh, no, we're
all caught up.
We've
Okay,
had less than 24 hours between meetings, sorry.
No, I guess what I meant, I saw emails about minutes, but it was you filing minutes with the town clerk. So
I will get some files. from the town clerk.
thank you. I did not mean even for a second to imply that we had any expectation of seeing minutes from 23 hours ago right now. That wouldn't be right. Okay, so I guess until Tuesday at 6, we stand adjourned unless there's anything else. Hearing nothing.
We need a motion to
We
adjourn.
do need a motion, exactly. I was going to say everybody's favorite motion. Somebody want to bring it?
I make a motion to adjourn
Gene, then Mike. Roll
at
call.
9:52.
Roll call voting. Gina Spino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Rob Hillman. I too am an aye. Thank you. That went well, I think, and we voted a budget, which is great. So
That's good.
have a good weekend. I'll see you all Tuesday at 6.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
You can stop the recording, Tracy.
Mike, if you could just send me the time that the meeting started, I think I got everything else.
It's about
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll send you an email with what I have in notes, Patrick.
Okay.
I think it
Excellent,
was
thank you.
7:05.